The dust cloud grew larger on the horizon as Violet O'Malley clutched her weathered suitcase, fighting back tears as the stagecoach rumbled away, leaving her stranded at the Lonely Way Station in Copper Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1875. Her family's final words still stung like venom. "You're nothing but a burden with that leg of yours, find your own way now." At 22, she had been cast aside like yesterday's garbage, deemed unmarriageable and useless due to the limp she'd carried since childhood fever. The way station keeper barely acknowledged her as she settled on a rough-hewn bench, uncertain what would become of her now. The little money she had wouldn't last more than a few days. Exhausted from the 3-day journey, Violet rested her head against her luggage, wondering if she would need to sleep under the stars tonight. "Miss, you planning on catching the next stage?" The keeper finally addressed her, his voice gruff but not unkind. "No, sir, I'm staying." The words felt hollow in her mouth. The man raised his eyebrows. "Copper Creek ain't much of a destination, especially for a lady alone." Violet swallowed hard. "I've nowhere else to go. There's a boarding house in town. Mrs. Reynolds might take you in temporarily, maybe find you some work if you're handy with a needle or can cook." Hope flickered briefly in Violet's chest. "Thank you. How far to town?" "About a mile down that road," he pointed. "I'd offer you a ride, but my boy took the wagon to fetch supplies." Violet nodded, gathering her courage. 1 mile with her bad leg would be painful but not impossible. She'd walked further at home when her family needed her to before they'd decided her limp made her more trouble than she was worth. As she struggled to her feet, the sound of approaching hoofbeats made her pause. A rider appeared, his broad-shouldered silhouette backlit by the setting sun. He dismounted in one fluid motion, leading a magnificent palomino to the water trough. "Afternoon, Owen," the station keeper called. "Afternoon, Frank," the rider replied, removing his hat to reveal sun-streaked brown hair. "Any mail come in? Not today. Got a visitor, though." The man called Owen turned, and Violet found herself meeting the steadiest pair of blue eyes she'd ever seen. He nodded politely in her direction, then returned his attention to the keeper. "I'm heading back to the ranch. Need anything from town next time I'm there?" "We're set, thanks. Say, this young lady needs to get to Mrs. Reynolds' place. Your ranch is that way, ain't it?" Owen Nelson studied Violet more carefully, noticing her simple dress, worn suitcase, and the way she favored her right leg. His expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes softened. "Would you like a ride into town, Miss O'Malley?" "Violet O'Malley," she replied, trying to maintain her dignity despite her circumstances. "And I couldn't impose. It's no imposition. Sundown's coming, and it's not safe for a lady to be walking alone." He gestured to his horse. "Buckshot here is gentle and won't mind carrying 2 for a short distance." Pride warred with practicality in Violet's mind. The mile walk would be grueling, and darkness was indeed falling. "Thank you, Mr. Nelson. I accept your kind offer." Owen helped her onto his horse, his hands respectful but strong as he lifted her. Once she was settled, he swung up behind her with practiced ease, careful to leave appropriate space between them. "Hold on to the saddle horn," he instructed, clicking to Buckshot. As they started toward town, Violet could feel the eyes of the station keeper watching them depart. The ride was awkward at first, with Violet trying to maintain both her balance and her dignity. "Are you from Copper Creek, Mr. Nelson?" she asked, attempting conversation to distract from her discomfort, born and raised. "My father started the Flying N Ranch about 10 miles outside town. I run it now." His voice rumbled behind her, deep but gentle. "What brings you to Copper Creek, Miss O'Malley?" "We don't get many visitors who aren't just passing through." Violet tensed. I've come to make a new start." Owen didn't press further, seeming to sense her reluctance. "Mrs. Reynolds is a good woman, fair. She'll treat you right if you work hard." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Violet said firmly. "I can sew, cook, keep accounts, and I read well. Those are valuable skills out here." As they approached the small but bustling town, Violet saw wooden buildings lining a wide dirt street. A saloon with piano music spilling from its doors dominated one corner, while a general store, blacksmith, and what appeared to be a small hotel stood opposite. "That's the boarding house," Owen said, pointing to a 2-story white clapboard building with green shutters. He guided Buckshot to the front steps and dismounted, then reached up to help Violet down. His hands were calloused but gentle as he lifted her from the saddle. When her bad leg touched ground, she winced involuntarily. "You're hurt," he observed. "Old injury," she replied quickly. "Childhood fever damaged the muscles. I manage fine." Something flashed in his eyes, not pity, which she despised, but something else she couldn't identify. "Let me carry your suitcase up the steps." Before she could protest, Owen had her luggage in hand and was knocking on the door. A plump woman in her 50s answered, her eyebrows rising at the sight of them. "Owen Nelson, what have you brought me this time?" she asked, but her tone was warm. "Evening, Mrs. Reynolds. This is Miss Violet O'Malley. She's new to town and needs lodging." The woman studied Violet with shrewd but not unkind eyes. "Come in, dear, we'll get you settled." Violet turned to Owen. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Nelson." He replaced his hat, nodding. "Welcome to Copper Creek, Miss O'Malley. I hope you find what you're looking for here." With that, he mounted Buckshot and rode off, leaving Violet to face her uncertain future. Mrs. Reynolds proved to be as fair as Owen had suggested. She offered Violet a small room on the ground floor when she noticed her limp, and agreed to reduce the boarding fee in exchange for Violet helping with cooking and sewing. "I run a respectable house," Mrs. Reynolds explained as she showed Violet her room. "No gentlemen callers in the bedrooms, meals at 7, noon, and 6, and Sundays are for church unless you're deathly ill." "I understand completely," Violet assured her. "How long do you plan to stay in Copper Creek?" the older woman asked. "I'm not sure yet. I need to find permanent work." Mrs. Reynolds nodded. "Well, we'll see what we can do about that. Town's growing might be opportunities. Rest tonight, and tomorrow we'll talk more." Left alone, Violet unpacked her meager possessions and sat on the narrow bed, finally allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. Tears slid down her cheeks as she recalled her father's cold dismissal after her mother's death 3 months ago. "You'll never marry with that leg, and I can't keep feeding an extra mouth," he'd said, pressing train fare into her hand. Her brothers had averted their eyes, offering no defense. 22 years of cooking their meals, mending their clothes, and keeping their house counted for nothing when measured against her perceived defect. Wiping her tears, Violet straightened her shoulders. "I'll show them," she whispered to the empty room. "I'm not a burden, I never was." The next morning, Violet rose early to help Mrs. Reynolds with breakfast for the boarding house's 5 other residents, 2 school teachers, a clerk from the general store, and an elderly married couple. They eyed her curiously but were polite, asking basic questions about where she'd come from. "St. Louis," she answered simply, not elaborating on the circumstances of her departure. After breakfast, Mrs. Reynolds suggested Violet accompany her to the general store to be introduced around town. "First impressions matter in a small place like this," she advised. "And Mr. Holden at the store might know who's hiring." Copper Creek was much livelier by day. Children ran along the boardwalks while women shopped and men conducted business. Violet felt eyes on her as she walked beside Mrs. Reynolds, conscious of her limp but determined to hold her head high. At the general store, Mr. Holden greeted them warmly. "New resident?" he asked, looking Violet over. "Yes, this is Miss O'Malley. She's skilled with a needle and good with figures," Mrs. Reynolds explained. "Is that so?" Mr. Holden rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Well, Mrs. Perkins was just saying she needs help at the dress shop since her daughter's getting married and moving to Cheyenne, and the bank's always looking for someone who can count past 10 without using their toes." Violet smiled despite herself. "I'd be happy to speak with Mrs. Perkins. She's right across the street. Tell her I sent you." Just as they were preparing to leave, the store door opened and Owen Nelson entered, followed by a tall, striking woman in an elegant riding habit. "Owen, good to see you in town so soon," Mr. Holden greeted. "Just escorting Miss Blackwell to purchase supplies for the harvest dance," Owen replied, his eyes finding Violet's briefly before turning to his companion. The woman Miss Blackwell was everything Violet was not, tall, graceful, and impeccably dressed, with a confidence that came from wealth and station. Her blonde hair was arranged perfectly beneath a fashionable hat, and she regarded Violet with polite disinterest. "Miss O'Malley," Owen acknowledged with a tip of his hat. "I see you've settled in." Yes, thank you again for your assistance yesterday. Miss Blackwell raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. You're acquainted? I gave Miss O'Malley a ride into town from the way station, Owen explained. How gallant, Miss Blackwell replied, slipping her hand into the crook of his elbow possessively. Owen is always helping strays, aren't you, dear? Violet felt heat rise to her cheeks at being labeled a stray, but she maintained her composure. Mrs. Reynolds has been very kind in helping me get oriented. If you'll excuse us, we were just on our way to the dress shop. As they left, Violet could feel Owen's eyes following her, but she didn't look back. That's Katherine Blackwell, Mrs. Reynolds explained once they were outside. Her father owns the largest cattle operation this side of the territory. She's had her sights set on Owen Nelson since they were teenagers. They seem well matched, Violet observed, ignoring the inexplicable twinge of disappointment in her chest. Perhaps, Mrs. Reynolds said cryptically. Though Owens never seemed in any hurry to make it official, despite everyone's expectations. At the dress shop, Violet found Mrs. Perkins in desperate need of help. Not only was her daughter leaving, but orders for the upcoming harvest dance had overwhelmed her. You can sew, you say, Mrs. Perkins asked, eyeing Violet's hands. Yes, madam, I can show you samples of my work. Can you start tomorrow? I pay fair wages, but I expect quality and punctuality. Yes, madam, I'll be here at whatever time you require. Just like that, Violet had secured employment. As they walked back to the boarding house, she felt a small measure of pride. Her first day in town, and already she had a roof over her head and a job. Perhaps Copper Creek would be the fresh start she needed. But that evening, as Violet helped serve dinner, she overheard two of the boarders whispering. Poor thing with that leg, no wonder she's alone. Mrs. Reynolds says her family sent her away. Can't blame them. What man would want a wife who can't even walk properly? The familiar words sliced through Violet's carefully constructed composure. Setting down the bread basket with trembling hands, she excused herself and retreated to the kitchen, willing the tears not to fall. She was arranging dessert plates when Mrs. Reynolds entered. Don't let idle gossip upset you, the older woman said kindly. Small towns breed wagging tongues. I'm used to it, Violet replied, though the lie was transparent. I've heard worse from my own family. Mrs. Reynolds squeezed her shoulder. They're lost, dear. Now help me serve this apple cobbler before it gets cold. Over the next 2 weeks, Violet established a routine. She worked at the dress shop 6 days a week, helped with breakfast and dinner at the boarding house, and slowly began to feel less like an outsider in Copper Creek. She saw Owen Nelson occasionally at church on Sundays or when he came to town for supplies. He always tipped his hat and inquired after her welfare, but their interactions were brief, especially when Miss Blackwell was nearby, which was increasingly often as the harvest dance approached. One afternoon, as Violet was pinning a hem for a customer, the bell above the shop door jangled. Looking up, she was surprised to see Owen enter alone. Mr. Nelson, Mrs. Perkins greeted. What brings you to our little shop? Need a new Sunday shirt. Actually, he said, removing his hat, I was hoping to commission a dress. A dress? Mrs. Perkins exchanged a glance with Violet. For Miss Blackwell, I presume? No, madam. For my little sister, Olivia. She's turning 16 next month, and I thought a new dress might be a nice gift. She's about Miss O'Malley's height, though not as slender. He looked at Violet then, his gaze direct. Well, we'd need measurements, Mrs. Perkins began. I was hoping Miss O'Malley might be able to visit the ranch. Olivia could be measured, and they could discuss what a young lady might want in a dress these days. I don't trust my judgment on such matters. Mrs. Perkins looked uncertain. I suppose we could arrange something on a Sunday. I could take her this Sunday after church, Owen suggested. Bring her back before dark. The idea of riding alone with Owen Nelson to his ranch sent an unexpected flutter through Violet's chest. She kept her expression neutral as Mrs. Perkins considered the proposal. It would be a significant commission, Owen added, and there might be others. My mother's health keeps her homebound most days, but she appreciates fine dressmaking. That sealed it. Mrs. Perkins could never turn down potential business from a family as respected as the Nelsons. Very well. Miss O'Malley, you'll accompany Mr. Nelson this Sunday after services. Owen smiled, a warm, genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. I appreciate it, ladies. I'll have Olivia expecting you. After he left, Mrs. Perkins turned to Violet with a speculative look. That's curious. The Nelsons usually shop in Cheyenne for special occasions. Perhaps it's more convenient to have something made locally, Violet suggested, returning to her hemming. Perhaps, Mrs. Perkins echoed, but her tone suggested she wasn't convinced. Sunday arrived clear and bright. After church services, Violet found Owen waiting outside with a small buggy rather than his horse. I thought this might be more comfortable for you, he explained, helping her up. The ride to the ranch is bumpy in places. His thoughtfulness touched her. Thank you. As they drove through the rolling Wyoming landscape, Violet found herself relaxing in Owen's company. He pointed out landmarks and shared stories about growing up in the area. Your family has been here a long time, she observed. My father came west after the war, met my mother, and built our ranch from nothing, he said with quiet pride. He passed 3 years ago, but not before seeing the Flying N become one of the most successful operations in the territory. And now you run it. Along with my younger brother, Oliver, he handles the business side while I manage the ranch itself. And your sister, Olivia, his expression softened. She's the baby, 16 going on 30 according to her, headstrong, smart as a whip, and convinced she knows everything. Violet smiled. Sounds like a typical 16-year-old. She's been pestering me about the harvest dance. Wants a dress that will make her look grown up but not old-fashioned. I'm hoping you can help translate what that means. I'll do my best, Violet promised, enjoying his obvious affection for his sister. The Flying N Ranch was more impressive than Violet had imagined. A large, well-built main house stood surrounded by various outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse. A stream ran along one side, and mountains created a dramatic backdrop. It's beautiful, she said sincerely as Owen helped her down from the buggy. It's home, he replied simply. Olivia Nelson turned out to be a spirited young woman with her brother's blue eyes and a cascade of chestnut curls. She greeted Violet with enthusiasm. Finally, someone who might understand what I want. Owen is hopeless. Miss O'Malley is here to take your measurements and discuss designs, Owen reminded her. Try not to overwhelm her in the first 5 minutes, Mrs. Nelson joined them for tea, a gentle woman with an air of fragility but sharp, intelligent eyes. She studied Violet with interest as they discussed fabrics and styles for Olivia's dress. You have excellent taste, Miss O'Malley, she commented. Where did you learn dressmaking? My mother taught me, Violet answered. She was a seamstress before she married. And what brought you to our little corner of Wyoming? Mrs. Nelson inquired. The direct question caught Violet off guard. She hesitated, then decided on honesty. My family felt I was a burden. My leg makes certain tasks difficult, and they decided it was best if I made my own way. A silence fell over the table. Olivia looked shocked, Mrs. Nelson sympathetic, and Owen looked angry, his jaw tightening visibly. Well, their loss is Copper Creek's gain, Mrs. Nelson said finally. Anyone who can sew like you do is an asset, not a burden. The conversation moved on, but Violet noticed Owen watching her with an unreadable expression. Later, as she was measuring Olivia in the parlor, she overheard Owen and his mother speaking in low voices in the hallway. She seems a lovely young woman, Mrs. Nelson was saying. Refined, intelligent. Mother, Owen's voice held warning. I'm merely observing. Catherine Blackwell has been almost engaged to you for 3 years, yet no announcement. Perhaps your heart knows something your head hasn't acknowledged. Violet O'Malley arrived in town 2 weeks ago. I barely know her. Yet you brought her here when Catherine has been angling for an invitation for years. There was a pause before Owen replied, Catherine doesn't need a dress made. Mrs. Nelson's soft laughter drifted into the parlor. Of course, it's all about Olivia's dress. Violet quickly focused on her measurements when she heard footsteps approaching. She tried to ignore the warmth that had spread through her at Mrs. Nelson's implications, reminding herself that Owen was as good as spoken for. The afternoon passed pleasantly. Olivia proved to have excellent ideas about her dress, and by the time they finished, Violet had detailed notes and sketches to work from. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Nelson pressed Violet's hand. You must come again, perhaps for Sunday dinner next week. We could discuss a dress for me as well. I would be honored, Violet replied, touched by the invitation. On the drive back to town, the conversation flowed easily between them until Owen suddenly asked, "Was it difficult, leaving your family?" Violet stared at the passing landscape. Yes and no, they made it clear I wasn't wanted, but she swallowed hard. They were still my family. Family should protect their own, not cast them aside because of something beyond their control, Owen said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. My father had 3 sons to feed besides me. Without my mother. Violet trailed off, wondering why she was defending people who had discarded her so easily. There's always a choice, Owen said firmly. Always. They rode in silence for a while before he spoke again. You've made quite an impression in town, Mrs. Perkins tells everyone you're the best seamstress she's ever employed. She's kind to say so. It's not kindness if it's true, he glanced at her. You've proven yourself valuable in just 2 weeks. Imagine what you'll accomplish in 2 years. The thought startled Violet. She hadn't allowed herself to think that far ahead, focusing instead on surviving day to day. I suppose I might save enough to open my own shop someday, she ventured. Why not? Copper Creek is growing. There's room for ambition here. His belief in her possibilities warmed something long cold inside Violet. For so long, her family had treated her disability as if it defined her entire worth. Owen seemed to see past it entirely. As they approached town, Violet spotted Catherine Blackwell standing outside the general store. The other woman's eyes narrowed as she recognized the buggy and its occupants. I think your intended is waiting for you, Violet observed quietly. Owen followed her gaze and frowned. Catherine is not my intended. Everyone seems to think otherwise. Everyone is wrong. He drew the buggy to a stop in front of the boarding house rather than where Catherine stood. Thank you for today. Olivia was thrilled, and my mother hasn't looked that animated in months. I enjoyed myself very much, Violet admitted. His eyes held hers for a moment. Until Sunday dinner then. Yes, she agreed, before he helped her down from the buggy. As she watched him drive away, Violet couldn't help but notice Catherine Blackwell's poisonous glare. Something told her that the upcoming harvest dance might be more eventful than she'd anticipated. The following week brought a flurry of activity at the dress shop. The harvest dance was only 10 days away, and final fittings kept Violet busy from dawn until dusk. She worked on Olivia's birthday dress in the evenings, determined to create something special. On Wednesday afternoon, the shop door opened to admit Catherine Blackwell, accompanied by 2 friends. The wealthy rancher's daughter surveyed the modest shop with thinly veiled disdain. Mrs. Perkins, I need alterations on my dance gown, she announced without preamble. The seamstress in Cheyenne was incompetent. Of course, Miss Blackwell, Miss O'Malley can help you right away. Catherine's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Miss O'Malley, the newcomer. She's our finest seamstress, Mrs. Perkins assured her. You'll be in good hands. Catherine studied Violet for a long moment before handing over a wrapped package. Very well, but I warn you, this fabric cost more than you'd earn in a year. Don't ruin it. Unwrapping the gown, Violet had to admire its quality. Made of deep blue silk with delicate beading, it was clearly expensive. What needs altering? She asked professionally. The bodice is too loose, the hem too long, and the sleeves need adjusting. Violet helped Catherine into the fitting room and began pinning adjustments. I understand you visited the Nelson Ranch on Sunday, Catherine remarked casually as Violet worked on the hem. Yes, to measure Owen's sister for a birthday dress. How convenient. A perfectly innocent reason to spend time with one of the most eligible bachelors in the territory. Violet kept her eyes on her work. I'm here to do a job, Miss Blackwell, nothing more. Good, because Owen and I have an understanding. We've been practically engaged for years. So I've heard, Violet replied neutrally. He's just waiting for the right moment to make it official. Probably at the harvest dance. Violet pinned the last section of him. There, if you'll remove the dress carefully, I'll have the alterations done by Friday. Catherine stepped out of the gown. See that you do a perfect job. I want to look my best when Owen finally proposes. After Catherine left, Mrs. Perkins sighed. Don't let her bother you. She's been saying Owen's about to propose for at least 3 years. It's none of my concern, Violet insisted, though her heart wasn't in the words. Sunday dinner at the Nelson Ranch was a warm, lively affair. Oliver Nelson proved to be charming and witty, while Olivia peppered Violet with questions about St. Louis. Mrs. Nelson treated her like a long-lost daughter, and Owen watched her with quiet attention that made her heart flutter traitorously. After dinner, he suggested a walk by the stream. "You've been sitting all day. Might do your leg good to stretch it." The thoughtfulness of his consideration offering movement for her benefit rather than treating her limp as a limitation touched Violet deeply. As they walked slowly along the water's edge, Owen asked, "Will you attend the harvest dance?" "I haven't decided. Mrs. Perkins has invited me to help with last-minute emergencies, but I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," he admitted with a smile. "Two left feet, according to Olivia." "Then why do you go?" "Tradition. The community expects it." He paused. "Katherine certainly expects it." Violet looked away. "She's very beautiful. Her dress will be stunning once the alterations are complete." "Katherine has always been concerned with appearances," Owen said neutrally. "Isn't everyone? First impressions matter, especially for women." "Do they? My first impression of you was a determined young woman who refused to let circumstances defeat her, not your limp or your dress or how your hair was styled." The directness of his statement made Violet stop walking. "Most people see the limp first. It defines me in their eyes." "Most people are fools, then." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Violet felt her cheeks warm and looked away first. "We should head back," she suggested. "It's getting late." On the drive back to town, Owen was quieter than usual. As they approached the boarding house, he finally spoke. "Would you do me the honor of saving me a dance next Saturday? Just one. We can both pretend to know what we're doing." Violet hesitated. "Katherine wouldn't like it." "I'm not asking Katherine," he said simply. "I'm asking you, against her better judgment." Violet nodded. "One dance." His smile made her stomach flip. "One dance," he agreed. The harvest dance was held in the town hall, decorated with autumn leaves, pumpkins, and golden bunting. Violet wore her best dress, a modest navy blue with lace trim that she'd altered to look more current. Mrs. Reynolds had insisted on arranging her hair, declaring that even if Violet was working, she should look her best. From her station near the refreshment table, where she waited with needle and thread for any dress emergencies, Violet watched the townspeople arrive. The Nelsons made an impressive entrance. Mrs. Nelson elegant in a burgundy gown, Oliver dashing in a black suit, Olivia radiant in a green dress that complemented her coloring perfectly, and Owen. Violet's breath caught at the sight of him in formal attire, tall and handsome in a way that made her heart race. Catherine Blackwell arrived moments later, stunning in the blue silk gown Violet had altered. She immediately claimed Owen's arm, casting a triumphant glance in Violet's direction. Throughout the evening, Violet handled several minor repairs while watching the dancing from the sidelines. Katherine never left Owen's side, and as midnight approached, Violet resigned herself to the fact that their promised dance would not materialize. As the band announced the last waltz, Violet began packing her sewing kit. A shadow fell across her work, and she looked up to find Owen standing before her. "I believe you promised me a dance, Miss O'Malley." She glanced past him to where Katherine stood with her father, her expression thunderous. "I'm not sure that's wise." "One dance," he reminded her, extending his hand. "We agreed." Taking a deep breath, Violet placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her onto the dance floor. His arm went around her waist, strong and steady as they began to move with the music. "See, not so bad," he murmured. "Speak for yourself. I'm counting steps in my head." His laugh was warm, intimate. "So am I." As they waltzed, Violet was conscious of the stares, the whispers. Owen Nelson dancing with the lame newcomer instead of Katherine Blackwell was fodder for gossip that would last months. "Everyone's watching," she whispered. "Let them," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've been wanting to hold you like this since the day I met you." The confession sent heat coursing through her. "Owen, I know it's sudden. I know you came here for a fresh start, not to be the center of town gossip, but I can't help how I feel." Violet. Before she could respond, Katherine appeared beside them, her face a mask of fury. "Owen, your mother is asking for you." Owen didn't stop dancing. She can wait until the song ends. It's inappropriate for you to be dancing with her. When everyone knows what, Katherine? Owen interrupted, his voice level but firm. That we're friends, that's all we've ever been, despite what you've told people. Katherine's face flushed crimson. How dare you humiliate me this way? By now, other dancers had stopped to watch the confrontation. Violet tried to pull away, but Owen held her firmly. I've never led you on, Katherine. I've never proposed, never made promises. But my father and your mother, everyone assumed. That's the problem with assumptions, Owen said quietly. They're often wrong. Katherine's eyes filled with angry tears. You'll regret this, Owen Nelson. She stormed off, her father hurrying after her. The music had stopped. In the awkward silence, Violet was acutely aware of every eye on them. I should go, she whispered. Owen shook his head. No more running, Violet, not for me and not for you. He looked around at the staring crowd. Yes, I'm sweet on Miss O'Malley. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. A murmur ran through the crowd. Then, to Violet's astonishment, Mrs. Nelson stepped forward. Well, it's about time you showed some sense, son, she declared loudly. Katherine Blackwell has been chasing you for years, and you've been about as receptive as a fence post. She turned to Violet. Dear girl, I hope you'll be patient with him. The Nelson men are notoriously slow about matters of the heart. The tension broke as people laughed. The band struck up a lively tune, and gradually, couples returned to dancing. Owen led Violet outside into the cool night air. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. You didn't, she assured him, still processing what had happened. But Owen, we've only known each other a short time, people will talk. Let them, he took her hands in his. Violet, the day you arrived in Copper Creek, I was at my wit's end. The ranch was struggling after 2 bad winters. Katherine was pressuring me to propose, and I felt trapped. That morning, I prayed for an answer, some sign about what direction my life should take. He smiled softly. Then I saw you at the way station, determined and dignified despite being abandoned by those who should have protected you. In that moment, something inside me said, there she is. The answer to your prayer. Violet's eyes widened. Me, but I was a stranger with a limp and a single suitcase. You were strength and grace personified. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. I know it seems fast. I'm not asking for promises tonight. Just a chance to court you properly, to see where this might lead. Tears pricked at Violet's eyes. My whole life, I've been made to feel like a burden because of my leg. How can I be sure you won't eventually see me the same way? Because I see you, Violet, not your limp. You. He cupped her cheek gently. You're the furthest thing from a burden I could imagine. You're the answer I didn't even know I was looking for. Under the star-studded Wyoming sky, Violet felt years of hurt begin to heal. This man, this kind, honest man, saw value in her that her own family had never recognized. I'd like that chance, she whispered. Very much. 6 months later, as spring turned the Wyoming landscape green, Violet stood in Mrs. Perkins' shop, now half owned by Violet herself, putting the finishing touches on her wedding dress. The ivory satin gleamed in the afternoon light as she carefully stitched the last pearl onto the bodice. The bell above the door jangled, and she looked up to see Owen entering, his face breaking into a smile that still made her heart skip. You're not supposed to see the dress before the wedding, she scolded without heat. I'm not looking at the dress, he replied, crossing to kiss her softly. I'm looking at my almost wife, who happens to be the most talented dressmaker in the territory. Since the harvest dance, their courtship had progressed steadily. Owen had been patient and attentive, giving Violet time to believe in his sincerity while showing her in countless ways that her limp was irrelevant to how he saw her. The town had adjusted to the unexpected match. Katherine Blackwell had left for Denver shortly after the dance, while Mrs. Nelson had embraced Violet as the daughter she'd always wanted. The dress shop was thriving, with orders coming in from as far as Cheyenne. Is everything ready for tomorrow? Violet asked, setting aside her sewing. Everything except me. I won't be ready until you're officially Mrs. Nelson. He took her hands. Your family replied to the wedding invitation. They're not coming. Violet had sent the invitations more out of duty than hope. I expected as much. Their loss, Owen said firmly. We have plenty of family here. My mother already considers you a daughter, Olivia worships the ground you walk on, and even Oliver admits you're the best thing that's happened to me. And the ranch hands. Do they still think you've lost your mind marrying a woman who limps? Any man who said that would find himself looking for new employment. His blue eyes were serious. Besides, they've seen you outwork half the town despite your leg. Most of them are in awe of you. Violet smiled. I still can't believe how much has changed in 6 months. Believe it. He kissed her again, lingering this time. You were never a burden, Violet. You were always a blessing. Your family was too blind to see it, but I thank God every day that they sent you away so you could find your way to me. As they stood together in the golden afternoon light, Violet marveled at the journey that had brought her here from unwanted burden to beloved bride, from rejection to belonging. Tomorrow she would marry Owen Nelson, and together they would build a life based not on what either of them lacked, but on all they had to offer each other. In the end, what her family had meant as punishment had become her greatest gift. They had called her a burden and sent her away, but Owen had recognized her true worth from the start. In his eyes, she wasn't defined by her limp, she was defined by her heart, her skills, and her spirit. And in that recognition, Violet had finally found home.